I am confused. Being philosophically consistent and being a very honest person, I'm sure you can tell me where God came from.
Good question. Who created God?
Then what created God?
If you believe that God created the universe, then logically you've got to ask the question, who created God? And then you have to ask, who created the God that created the God that created the God that created the God that...
At a certain point in my life, I went through a period of questioning about religion, especially around the existence of God. This was an important question, and I was very, very eager to find out if this creator, this being really exists.
Order and design do not come out of chaos by chance.
Right.
Order and design point to some type of intelligent mind.
Do you remember the last time you traveled and you came across a very beautiful place and you were so amazed by what you saw, but you couldn't help but ask, is this beauty just a pure luck, a result of a random explosion as explained by the Big Bang theory? Could there be a designer behind such a beautiful creation? I have also been on that spot, and this question led me to a big rabbit hole that will affect my life in a way that I could have never imagined. So, is the Big Bang theory true? The Big Bang theory is how astronomers explain the way the universe began. It's the idea that about 13.8 billion years ago, the universe started from a single tiny, extremely hot and dense point, and then exploded, began expanding rapidly to grow as large as it is right now, and is still stretching. But is this theory complete in itself as an explanation of the creation of the world?
If the Big Bang Theory is true, then I would like to know what exploded and where did it come from and where did the energy come from and where did the space come from for the matter to expand into, and where did the organization come from and where did the information come from? There's a whole host of questions that are a whole lot harder for you to answer than in the beginning God. Where's information come from? This universe is not just random molecules circulating around. I mean, it carries information. Just like a book is so much more than ink on a paper. It carries information. And the DNA is more than just chemicals. It's information. So the evolutionist never answers the question, where did this information come from? Where did the energy come from? Where did the matter itself come from? You think matter is either eternal or can create itself. What's the two choices? How did matter get here? The world is here. Where did the matter come from? Did it just happen by itself, or is it all just imaginary? We're not really here at all. You're faced with the option of, we're not really here, this is all just our imagination, or it had a beginning, or matter is eternal, which is both of the second two options are in violation of the obvious laws of thermodynamics. Matter doesn't create itself. And everything degrades over time, so either it had a beginning or it didn't. If it had a beginning, then what was before the beginning?
Then why can't nature exist in the exact same way, in an eternal, uncaused, spaceless, timeless, immaterial fashion? Why can't our uncaused origins be as marvelous and precise as God, but be natural causes?
Excellent question, Carter. That's a very good question. You're right that we have two options here. Either the universe is the uncaused first cause, or something beyond the universe is the uncaused first cause. The problem is that all the evidence points to the fact that the universe is not the uncaused first cause. And I didn't have time to go through that evidence tonight. That was part one. But I'll give it to you very briefly in an acronym, SURGE, S-U-R-G-E. S stands for the second law of thermodynamics, which says that the universe is running down. Well, if it's running down, somebody must have wound it up. We'd have no energy left right now if the universe was eternal. The U stands for the fact that the universe is expanding. Edwin Hubble detected that back in 1929 and shows that everything came from a single point, a point actually of infinite density, the singularity, which is actually nothing. So the universe had a beginning. The R in SURGE stands for the radiation afterglow. That's the remnant heat discovered by Penzias and Wilson in 1965, which is literally the smoking gun to the Big Bang. There's heat, remnant heat from the Big Bang still out there, which shows that the universe had a beginning. The G in SURGE stands for the great galaxy seeds, which were very fine temperature variations in that radiation afterglow that allowed the galaxies to form in the early universe. And the E stands for Einstein's theory of general relativity, which shows that time, space, and matter are correlative, that they came into existence together, that space, time, and matter literally had a beginning. Einstein knew this in 1916. Then observational evidence began in 1919 when Eddington did his test on the eclipse. And then Hubble discovered the expanding universe in 1929, and then on to the radiation afterglow and the great galaxy seeds after that. So the evidence points to the fact that the universe is not the uncaused first cause. So
I am convinced that before the Big Bang, there was nothing.
Right.
Okay, and that's what Einstein acknowledged. And that's why Einstein tried to beat the Big Bang mathematically. And he introduced a fudge factor to try and prove that the Big Bang was not true. Because Einstein understood, if the Big Bang is true, my pantheism, which means everything is God, is wrong. There's a creator. Because everything that has a beginning has a cause. The universe has a beginning, therefore the universe has a cause. And it's far more reasonable to believe in the beginning an intelligent mind caused it than to believe nothing caused it.
Right.
And that's philosophically unacceptable. Bang! What caused that? Nothing. That is stupidity. Rank stupidity. Everything that has a beginning has a cause. The universe has a beginning, therefore the universe has a cause. What is the best answer to the question, who caused the universe?
In that case, it would be God, right?
Yeah, God is the most reasonable explanation.
As you can see, it doesn't make sense to say that the universe came out of nothing. There has to be a designer that is not affected by time, space, and matter. There has to be an originator that generated all this movement. Maybe that's what we call God, but we can ask ourselves, why can't we not apply the same principle to God by saying that there has then to be another source that creates God? So the question then is, who created God?
So something you said about like life not coming from non-life.
Yes.
So why is it, we could use the argument that this universe, it doesn't make sense for it to come out of nothing.
Right.
So, and there has to be something that created the universe, right? So why do we take that, why is that same logic not applicable to God? Like why could we say, well, why is God there? Like what created?
Good question. Who created God? Cliff, if you say that someone had to create the universe, why doesn't it follow that someone created God?
Your question, where did God come from, assumes that you're thinking of the wrong, obviously it displays that you're thinking of the wrong God, because the God of the Bible is not affected by time, space, or matter. If he's affected by time, space, or matter, he's not God. Time, space, and matter is what we call a continuum. All of them have to come into existence at the same instant, because if there were matter but no space, where would you put it? If there were matter and space but no time, when would you put it? You cannot have time, space, or matter independently. They have to come into existence simultaneously. The Bible answers that in 10 words. In the beginning, there's time. God created the heaven, there's space, and the earth. There's matter. So you have time, space, matter, created a trinity of trinities there. Just, time is past, present, future. Space has length, width, height. Matter has solid, liquid, gas. You have a trinity of trinities created instantaneously. And the God who created them has to be outside of them. If he's limited by time, he's not God. The guy who created this computer is not in the computer. He's not running around in there changing the numbers on the screen, okay? The God who created this universe is outside of the universe. He's above it, beyond it, in it, through it. He's unaffected by it.
If you believe that God created the universe, then logically you've got to ask the question, who created God? And then you have to ask, who created the God that created the God that created the God that created the God that created God? And so on ad infinitum. And that was the end of God, of course. And that's exactly what Dawkins says in The God Delusion. Well, let's analyze it for a moment. If you ask that question, it shows you've immediately categorized God as created. So you're talking about a created God. Now you imagine if Richard Dawkins had written a book called The Created God's Delusion. I don't think many people would have bought it, because I don't need him to tell me that created gods are a delusion. We usually call them idols, incidentally. But you see, this question... This question is extremely interesting because it's an illustration of a question that already rules out the explanation that's most likely to be true. Because the Christian claim is that God wasn't created. So if God was uncreated, in the beginning was the Word, and I'm coming to your 3-in-1 now, and I'm bringing it in obliquely. In the beginning was the Word was with God, and the Word was God. He already was. So the central Christian claim is, and in Judaism and Islam, of course, equally, is that God is eternal. So the question, by definition, doesn't even apply to him. And that's immensely important. The only way you can get anything out of it then, in the negative sense, is to assume that everything is in the category of the created, but that's just begging the original question. And the Greeks were interested in it, and that's why John's Gospel starts with those words. In the beginning, the Word already was, and then it says, all things came to be through him. The Greeks were interested in the question of two categories: the things that came to be, the created things, and the things that already were. And the question resolves down to this: is there a thing or a being that never came to be? And that is the Christian claim, and he's called God. But there's a little codicil to this, you see. Richard Dawkins, and I had a debate with him on this very topic in Oxford, and I said to him, Richard, you say that who created God is a legitimate question. I don't think it is, but let me assume now that it is. You believe that the universe created you. So I beg leave now to ask you, using your own question, who created your creator? I'm waiting still for the answer.
This clearly established the fact that there is an uncaused origin, someone that has not been created by anything, and that is the source of truth, the beginning, the real creator, that is not affected by time, space, and matter, but is outside all those three elements. So then what? If we agree and say that there is God, is it then a requirement for people to worship him or to know more about him? And my answer for you will be no. You are not required to worship him, or you are not required to try to understand or know better about him. You have free choice. And what is free choice? Free choice is defined as having the freedom to choose what you want to do and taking responsibility for those choices. But unfortunately, when you make a choice, you cannot decide of its consequences. I remember when I was a child, I would go to the kitchen, especially while my mom is preparing food. I would see the flame burning and cooking the food, and I would be tempted to put my hand in it. And I remember my sister would prevent me from doing so, warning me that this will harm me and that it is dangerous. Some years later, a moment came when I was again in the same kitchen, in front of the same flame. But the issue is my sister was not there, and I have a choice whether to go to the end of my curiosity by putting my hand in it, or to believe my sister and not to test that. But you see, I put my hand in, and guess what?
It burns! It burns!
You see, I could choose what to do, but I could not decide of its consequences. Say it another way, I could not choose to put my hand in the fire and decide not to be burned. So I could choose the action, but I could not decide of these consequences. The consequences come directly with the action. And it's the same with knowing God. You could choose to totally ignore him, but you could not decide of the consequences of that choice. You could also choose to go fully and discover him by learning more about him, but also you could not choose of the consequences of that action. Many years ago, after finding out this answer and coming to the clear conclusion that there has to be a being that is behind all this beauty we are experiencing daily, I have decided to go fully to learn more about this God and to discover as much as I can. And my life today has been totally transformed and changed by that single choice.